Yo! Welcome back to One More Mana. My name is Derik, and today I'm getting into another deck update, trying to squeeze in as many of these as I can before Kamigawa spoilers start, because I know all those previews are going to start going and stuff's going to start going down, and I have so many deck updates on the backlog that I want to get to. It's been almost 2 full years since I originally deck typed the Locust God, which I updated last week, and this week it is Feldon of the Third Path. Such a fun commander. It is crazy what the cards released over the last couple years have allowed this Feldon deck to do. So much of Feldon is allowing you to play the biggest, most inefficiently costed things ever, and my favorite thing is what's been released in the last couple years doesn't break the deck, but does help it to be more consistent, which has been a problem on and off. So I'm super excited to get into it. But if you want any of the amazing cards in this deck, if you just love Feldon and want all the different versions of Feldon like me, or some of the versions of the beautiful cards in this deck, then head on over to TCG Player. TCG Player is phenomenal. You can find anything you're looking for. With a lot of these updates, these are all my personal decks, so in the little link to Mox Field in the description, it's going to have all the specific printings I have. So if any stick out to you as being extra shiny and extra pretty, you want them, TCG Player will have whatever it is you're looking for. And if you use the affiliate link down in the description below, you can help support the channel in the process. Really appreciate all the help. So we'll just go ahead and start with Feldon. If you're not familiar with Feldon, Feldon is 1 and 2 red for a 2/3 adorable grandpa that you can pay 2 in a red and tap him to go ahead and make a token copy of any creature in your graveyard. It's an artifact, gains haste, and you sack it at the beginning of the end step. Of note is the fact it doesn't exile it, which is just amazing. I mentioned it in the deck tech, and I'll mention it again. If you haven't looked up his backstory, like, do it. It's one of the most touching, sad backstories. He went through all the different types of mana to try to bring back his wife because she was, I believe, tortured by Ashnod, and it just didn't go well. So you're doing all this work. Now, unfortunately, disclaimer, we're betraying the trust of this adorable old man. He's trying to bring back his wife, have a touching moment, and instead we're bringing back giant mechanical dragons and Wurmcoils and gear hulks. So sorry about that, dude, but we'll talk about it later. For now, we're gonna make those gear hulks and Wurmcoils and everything, and that's the beautiful part about this deck, is we are making just giant tokens, some of the most beautiful overcosted creatures in Magic, and we don't care because his ability allows us to cheat those mana costs. This deck is all about filling our graveyard through different looting effects and wheeling effects to just go ahead and just dump the big creatures, and then using cool abilities to bring them out of the graveyard in a mono red reanimator shell that is just so much freaking fun. Now, one thing to point out is during this course of this deck update, and really the most of the stuff I've updated, focuses on the enablers in this deck and not the payoffs. Look at the deck list, you can see all the big 6 to 11 mana giant monstrosities I have, but what those represent to me is the individuality of this deck. You can go off of what I have, you can just EDH wreck a Drakuseth deck that's playing big dragons, or you can look up whatever you want in a giant artifact based deck. Whatever your favorite 10 to 15 giant beaters are in red or artifacts, that's what all those slots represent. And that's the beauty to me of the deck, is that level of flexibility, and that you get to just throw out creatures you really wouldn't get a chance to cast anytime early in the game otherwise, and just do some giant swinging at face shenanigans, so jumping into the creatures again, we're going to focus on the enablers, not going to focus on the big beaters and everything like that. You can look through the deck list, they are beautiful and near and dear to my heart, but right now the focus is on the new cards, and really it's this enablement package and the payoff package that gets me so excited to keep coming back to this deck. Stuff that helps fill the graveyard has just gotten so creative. We have stuff like a Ruin Grinder, which is just so damn cool. You can mountain cycle it to go ahead and get it into the graveyard early. You can go ahead and get it out. And one of the coolest things about this is, yeah, it's a 7/4 Menace. So you can go ahead and, I was halfway between Menace and Menace on that. 7/4 Menace, you can get in for damage, but the best thing about it, when it dies, everyone may wheel. So it's not a forced wheel. The table's not going to get annoyed at you for wheeling every turn if you can't find a hand you like. It's really just one of the cool political wheels that I've seen, where it's not going to be forced. You have a decision in the process, and it gets through damage, and it's an artifact. It does everything we want in this deck, and it just really represents one of my favorite upgrades for the deck. Another one I love is Neheb Dreadhorde General. This thing's insane. Not only, if it connects, you're not only going to be able to pitch a bunch of cards you don't want, draw more cards, make a bunch of mana, but when you pitch cards, it's allowing you to cheat those mana costs with Feldon because they're in the graveyard. This is like a super ramp card in this deck, and especially with some of the effects where we can draw, get quite a few cards in our hand, this can really get silly. I didn't go a big mana, like the big red mana route with this deck, but still the amount of ramp and card selection this thing will give you does work. And then the last enabler I want to talk about is Perforos Bronze-Blooded, which I had the other Perforos in the initial list. This one's a much better fit. The fact that it just gets to sit there with Indestructible and give haste is huge, because haste is such an important part of this deck. You want Feldon to always get that activation off. I focused a lot more on that in the initial deck tech, but this is one of the best pieces now in allowing that to happen. Not to mention, it's kind of an inefficient sneak attack on a creature, which is crazy. And almost every one of our creatures is either red or artifact, give or take, I think, just an Eldrazi. So this is a great way to basically be a backup commander in the deck while also supporting your commander. And that's exactly what we want. But we also have some payoffs once the creatures are out. I have loved Arcbound Ravager in this deck. I didn't think I would. I just had a pretty version, so I want to throw it in. It's done work. It's a cheap artifact to get out to do a lot of our Goblin Welder shenanigans, because I think I run like 30-ish artifacts in this deck. So there's a lot of like weird artifact synergies just thrown in as well, which is great. But this allows us to be a cheap artifact to put out to Goblin Welder stuff out. It gets that incremental value for stuff coming out every turn by putting +1 counters on itself and allowing us to then throw those +1 counters onto one of our reanimated artifact monsters later in the game. For 2 mana, it just does so much work in what we want to do in this deck that I've just been shocked. I thought it was just a pet card I threw in, but it's really done way more than I expected. And then the last one that is just a huge payoff card that I think it was printed after my last deck tech, it's Terror of the Peaks. It's a Warstorm Surge and a creature. And what I love is, you know, ideally we cast it, have it out while we're reanimating stuff to throw damage around, but worst case, if it ends up in the graveyard, we have a random dragon to go ahead and reanimate if we don't have any other better targets. And it's why I basically swapped Warstorm Surge for this, because this deck, basically any effect you can get on a creature instead of an enchantment or something else is almost always better, because we can recur it, worst case scenario. And these the support shell is just insane. All these kind of come together to allow us to get these monsters out more consistently and do more work once they come out. Jump to the Planeswalkers next, because there's just one, Derik Spaghetti. I love Derik. I had a Derik deck for a while. Y'all might have seen it on Commander Petty. This is basically almost the same shell of it. Very similar, does work, reanimate stuff, gives card selection, and if by some random chance we ult him, kind of gravy on top. But no, that minus ability on Derik is mostly why he's here. It's an alternative means of reanimating stuff, but yeah, obviously you could almost switch him as the commander in some games. Crazy, just perfect for the deck. Another category that's kind of light, enchantments, just one now, just Fiery Emancipation. Trimmed all the fat in this category. It's just too good. This is such a fun card. Every time I get it out, everything goes crazy. Damage is tripled. I'm terrified I'm going to kill myself with my own Ancient Tomb. Just a great time. Yeah, this is the reason for me to want to play mono red, is a card like this with a triple red. The most red thing possible. And most of the times if I do end up winning games with this deck, that's usually the card that's doing it. With the artifacts, obviously a whole bunch of mana rocks. We want to ramp a lot just because, yeah, our commander's trying to reanimate stuff, but if our commander isn't available, we have a bunch of high CMC stuff. We want a good amount of ramp. And with the 3 CMC rocks I always talk about, 2 of my favorites are in this deck. Cursed Mirror is absolutely insane. Early game is a 3 CMC rock, which y'all know I love. Late game, it can copy something, come in with haste, and just do work in a deck with all these monstrosities. This card's flexibility is absolutely insane, and one of my favorite 3 CMC rocks made. I think the only one I probably have more praise for is Midnight Clock. This thing is insane. And another one is Skyclave Relic, which is so great. It's Darksteel Ingot with upside. You can go ahead and kick it, make a whole bunch of them, or you can just play it as a 3 CMC rocket. Again, the flexibility, early game, late game, it's going to do stuff, and that's really important to have, because drawing mana rocks late game isn't fun, and we have so much card filtering, it doesn't matter, but having the flexibility still makes a huge difference, and it's why I love all these new 3 CMC rocks. And the last one is also 3 CMC card, not a rock, but it is Battle Mage's Bracers. This is insane. I've actually took out Illusionist Bracers because that haste is crazy. It's a little bit less efficient, but being able to put it on Feldon and give haste and get the copying ability, that haste is so important. Seeing Grandpa sit around for a turn usually doesn't end well. Someone usually comes after him. But with something like this, it allows us to just leave this out and then just bam, go off that same turn. The last artifact I want to mention is Liquid Metal Torque. All these awesome mana rocks in this deck that this good deck got. The fact that we finally have a way to, I forgot the name of the other one, I'll put it on the screen, that turn things into artifacts, but having it on a 2 CMC rock, not only is it on a mana rock, but an incredibly efficient one. Card is crazy and allows some of our artifact shenanigans to go off in ways we wouldn't otherwise expect, and it gives us flexibility for removing our opponent stuff. Just beautiful. And these new cards really supplement the core artifact package to, again, help the deck run a little bit more efficiently. The sorceries are almost the same, but the ones that have been added are incredibly important. Jessica's Will is just one of the most broken cards I've ever played. This card's insane. It's probably incredibly expensive now and annoying, but this card just does work. And in a deck like this, which I found to be a little bit slow and not the most efficient, it really can get this. It is one of the most broken cards I play with. It just No other way to describe it. You play this once and you realize, like, okay, especially in mono red, and if you have your commander amount, the ramp, the selection. Yeah, I don't need to talk about Jessica's Will, everyone knows, but it's ridiculous. And then 2 new wheel effects, Wheel of Misfortune and Change of Fortune, I've absolutely loved. I actually moved my Wheel of Fortune over to another deck. Wheel of Misfortune I love. I know it's confusing to people, but what I love about it is the option to wheel. If people pick 0, they never have to wheel, and optional wheels are some of my favorite things because some of my decks aren't the highest power level and stuff like that. I need to make friends. I don't want the whole table to be pissed at me because I'm wheeling them, and this helps. So I do like the option there. I know the rules are a little confusing, but I have a good time with it. Change of Fortune is awesome. In a deck like this that has so many discard outlets, you could draw a lot of cards. There's so many, just discard a card, draw 2, discard 2 cards, draw 2, all that in this deck. Yeah, I played it, and I think I drew like 3 or 4 more cards than I had in hand before it. Awesome effect. I really enjoy what it does, and it's got really pretty art, so that helps too. And then with the instance, more of what we saw in the sorceries with those looting, like discard, draw, those types of effects. I love Cathartic Pyre, because that's just, the art's amazing, and the ability to have removal, early game removal, this is awesome. This deck doesn't have a ton of removal, and it's crazy how so many creatures in Commander have gotten such low toughnesses now. It used to be just all monsters, now there's a bunch of utility things. This is really solid creature removal in addition to the card selection we want. And speaking of cool interaction, Tybalt's Trickery is absolutely insane. You can use it on your own stuff if you're trying to get lucky and cheat something big out. Having a counterspell in red is great. I love this amount of, it's just small in the margins, adding a little bit more interaction to the deck, which I definitely think it needed. And then with the lands, pretty simple. You do want to try to put an emphasis on stuff that can give haste. So if you have the budget for a Hall of the Bandit Lord, or just a Flamekin Village, or a Handwire Battlements, those are all really, really good ways to give haste. I love Gaia Reach Sanitarium to kind of give you those discard effects. Those are hugely important. And outside of that, throw a whole bunch of mountains in. You don't really have to break the bank on this mana base. It's mono-colored. Command Beacon's great if you have one too, just because Commander attack stats up fast in red, but we're mono-colored, so if anything, having too many colorless pips is not a great thing because we have a lot of red focus spells. So mountains galore, and enjoy the show. I did go with this whole snow mountain synergies in this, but I used to run it without snow mountains. Really has made almost no difference. So whatever you have is going to work just fine. As far as my updates, Treasure Vault is probably the only like new one that I added that I've really found really some cool synergies with. Getting those treasures and allowing them to just enable more artifact synergies is really cool. But this mana base has been kept pretty similar. It didn't do me wrong in the past, and I kind of kept it the same way going forward. That's going to do it for all the categories. Now let's get into the best part of every deck tech or deck update, and in this case, the beardedest part. The beardiest part. The bearded part, and that is the game-winning step. How are we about to win the game with this deck? Realize it sounds funny coming from me with my terrible patchy beard, but just picture me as Feldon instead. It'll make more sense. This deck is so much fun, and there's basically just one way to win the game. We are punching face. I realize most game-winning steps are intricate, and there's all these different things and combos and intricacies. Nah, bro, we're just trying to just bring giant creatures back from the graveyard. Let Feldon go, mourn the loss of his loved one in the corner, and allow the giant monsters he creates to do work for him. Whether it's Mirror Battlesphearing someone, whether you want to go the dragon route and get big flyers, or whether you just want to keep recurring Scuttling Doom Engine over and over. It's whatever you want. Pick your poison, pick giant things. This deck is all about beating face over and over again. And most likely it'll be with Fire Emancipation, not gonna lie. But either way, it will be a beautiful time. It will be a very red time. And it's why Feldon is so much fun. It's gonna do it for this week's deck tech / update. Hope y'all enjoyed it. Play Feldon. If you haven't played Feldon already, give him a chance. He is so much fun. If you have any decks like that where you just keep going back to, let me know down in the comments below. As always, a huge shout out to the patrons. We love and appreciate y'all so much. Thank you for believing in what we do. There's always so many exciting things to come. I'm very excited to get to Kamigawa. There's a few, the ogre dude, I forgot his name. Ogre man with the different color showcase things. That might get built soon. Spoiler alert, but there's so many cool previews to come. I can't wait. But until then, I will see y'all next time.